Well, good morning. My name is Hector Garcia. My wife and I are originally from Monterrey, Mexico. That's where we were born. And so I went to DBTS, Detroit Baptist Theological Seminary. I'm a graduate of DBTS. Actually, Kevin Sherman and Matt Gass were my classmates. And Kevin was my roommate for about 3 years. So if you want to know more about me and all my sins and secrets, you can ask Kevin, all right? Or you can ask me about his. So no, we are very good friends, and now we work together in Zambia. I mean, I've been there since 2012, so this is my 13th year in Zambia. Originally, the Lord, we made a commitment with the institution there, the college, that we were only going to be there for 1 year. Because our plan was to plant Spanish-speaking churches either in Mexico or in the U.S. And the Lord had different plans. So, been able to do a lot of work with Hispanic churches anyway, just teaching them about missions, introducing them to missions and stuff. But the Lord had different plans, and now this has been a lot of years since we've been in Zambia. When we came to Zambia, the college was brand new almost, and very few students. It was just a small building, and now the Lord has given a lot of growth. Anyway, so I'm happy to be here with you guys. Somebody asked me if I was going to preach in Spanish. So, no, I'm not. They have me preach in English, and I don't know. Man, I hope you'll be able to understand me because, with all my Spanish background and then speaking Zambian, British, English, and then I'm learning some of the local language. I hope to be able to preach in 4 years in the local language. And I'm also learning Portuguese. So, I don't know. I hope you'll be able to follow me. I don't have the gift of tongues, so, but I do like tongues. So, I'm glad, I'm very happy to be here with you all. I met Pastor Dwight many years ago, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to share God's Word with you. And then tonight, a little bit about what God is doing in Africa through our ministry and what God has given us there to do for His glory. So just suffice it to say for now that we are working there in Zambia, and my family, I have my wife, her name is Paula, and then my sons, I have an 11-year-old son, Asher, and a 5-year-old son named Everett. So those two are quite energetic, especially the little one. It's like having 5 kids in one, but so how people say, oh, those little angels. Yeah, everyone is a sinner, So, but by God's grace, my son just made a profession of faith, the oldest one, and we'd been praying for years. Since he was 2, I prayed for him, with him every night that he'd come to know the Lord. So every night I'd pray with him. And he finally, a few weeks ago, he came to know the Lord. After a really difficult identity crisis he had for almost a year. My son was adopted. We adopted our first son in Africa. Doctors they told us that we would never have children. And we accepted it after 10 years about 8 years of marriage, or 7 years of marriage. The Lord gave us our son, Asher, through adoption. My wife was working with helping some orphanages. Then, how it happens sometimes, the Lord surprised us, and she ended up pregnant. I don't know how that happened. Well, I do know how she got pregnant. Well, you get what I'm saying, right? Don't distract me, please. I'm the only serious missionary in Zambia, so I'm going to keep you laughing here, okay? But yeah, my wife got pregnant, and God gave us a child biologically, so we're very grateful for what He's doing in our family, in our lives. I'll tell you more about it tonight, so please come back tonight, and I'd love to get to know each and one of you. If you have your Bibles, please open them to Matthew, book of Matthew in chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to be in this portion of scriptures today, and we're going to be in verses 18 to 22. Matthew chapter 8, 18 to 22. I'm going to read from the ESV, and I hope you'll follow along with me. The Bible says in verse 18, "Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, He gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, 'Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go.' And Jesus said to him, 'Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay His head.' Another of the disciples said to Him, 'Lord, let me first go and bury my father.' And Jesus said to him, 'Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead.'" I would like to talk to you this morning about the cost of being a disciple of Jesus. The cost of being a disciple of Jesus. Matthew has been showing us about some miracles that Jesus did. In all of chapter 8, we see some miracles that Jesus has just performed, and now Matthew connects us here back to verse 17. And in verse 17, he says that Jesus took our illnesses and He bore our diseases, quoting from the Old Testament. And when Matthew speaks of how Jesus bore our illnesses and He died for us, there's an implied self-denial from Jesus. And immediately after, in verse 18, now he's going to speak to us about the self-denial necessary of those who are to be disciples of Christ. And although Jesus is the only one that suffers in the place of others, His disciples must also be willing to suffer and to count the cost of what it means to follow Jesus. And He wants to make it clear that the path of discipleship, to be a disciple, this path is not a smooth one all the time. It's not always easy. The narrow road on which we walk is not always a bed of roses. And Jesus wants to make it clear that it's not that easy. So in this passage, He will teach us what it means to be a disciple of Christ. But before we go there, I want us to understand what a disciple is, because it's one of those words that we use a lot, right? A discipleship, disciple, and sometimes we don't know exactly the context of what it means. In the old times, they didn't have schools like we do today. So if you wanted to learn, if you wanted to be taught and educated, you had to place yourself under the authority and the teaching of a master or a teacher or a rabbi. And if you decided to study and train under him, you would have to follow him. You would have to live with him. You would have to submit with him, accept his teachings. And your greatest aspiration was to be like your master or your teacher. You left everything behind. You would leave your family behind. You would leave everything you were behind. And you would have to come and live with your teacher and train with your teacher and be like your teacher. You couldn't call yourself a disciple and not walk and not follow and not live like your master and with your master. A disciple had to leave everything behind to follow his master. It's almost like, today many kids go college shopping, right? Well, sometimes disciples would do that, but once you were in, you were all in. You had to follow your master. Therefore, a disciple was one that would leave everything and everyone behind in order to follow his master and to serve his teacher. And understanding this nature of discipleship is essential because of what Christ is about to teach us in this passage. And because to be a disciple meant that you would follow the rabbi, or the master wherever he went. And what we see here in this passage, we will learn about 3 different types of people that claim they will follow the Lord. And Jesus will teach them about what it means to follow him as a disciple. So these 3 types of people claim they will follow him, or claim to be disciples, or at least appear to be disciples. But we will see what they are like and what the passage has to teach us. And if I can summarize it in one phrase or in one sentence, it would be like this. Being a true disciple of Jesus means that you have counted the cost and you're willing to sacrifice everything to follow the Master. Being a true disciple of Jesus means that you have counted the cost and you're willing to sacrifice everything to follow the Master. And so this section is going to bring out the wholeheartedness of what it means to follow Jesus. And these people apparently are willing to follow him, and they recognize his teaching, and they recognize he was an outstanding rabbi, but they were not prepared to follow him. They were not prepared to make the sacrifices necessary of those who are real disciples. And so Matthew leaves his readers here with no doubt that Jesus demands wholehearted loyalty. And so let's look at the passage. Let's break it down, and I'm going to show you. It's basically 3 points, 3 types of people or would-be disciples that the passage will show us. And the first one is in verse 18. Verse 18. Number 1 is the crowd of false followers, the crowd of false disciples. Verse 18 says, now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. A true disciple of Jesus does not belong in a crowd of false followers. A true disciple of Jesus does not belong in a crowd of false followers. And you see, Jesus has just performed 3 amazing miracles. And the people are definitely amazed, not only at his teaching, but also his power. There was already a crowd around him. But this crowd was growing larger and larger. Most people in crowds are drawn to see what is going on, what they can see, or what they can benefit from what is going on. And people like crowds, right? I mean, you're driving down the interstate, there's an accident, right? You slow down and, and you're like, oh, I wonder what happened. I wonder if they're okay, right? And then you see a big crowd around that accident, right? Not only are people helping, but people taking videos and pictures, right? And then you see it on Facebook. And people like crowds. They like to follow what the crowds are doing. In Africa, people love crowds. People love crowds. So, something happens, and 30 seconds later, you have like 100 people. I don't know where they come from. So I got in an accident. I was driving. I was actually going very slow. And then this guy coming down. It was about to rain, so he's coming really hard on his bicycle, really fast. And then at the last moment, he comes into my lane and he hits me, right? And then, he went flying. There's a ditch where the water, the rain, goes, the rainwater goes or flows. And as soon as I hit him, I got out of my car to help him. 30 seconds later, I don't know where 100 people came from. And they were all screaming in the local language, right? And so then I got him out of the ditch. He's all bloody, and as I'm trying to help him, one guy goes, hey, he's my neighbor, he's my friend. Let me take his bicycle home, right, for him. And I say, okay, thank you. I'll take him to the hospital. So I grab the guy, and he goes, my bicycle. I mean, there's a lot of poverty, so owning a bicycle is a big deal. So, I said, no, don't worry, your friend already took it. No, I don't have any friends. He's not my friend. He goes, so I had to chase the guy down to the bush area and got the bicycle back from him. Then I took him to the hospital with the bicycle inside my truck, And so, but immediately there was a big crowd just to see what was going on. I was preaching one time, And as I'm preaching, I'm all fired up, I get fired up, anyway. So I'm all fired up, and I'm like, I'm like, the whole church is going to convert right now. And so anyway, so I'm fired up, right? And all of a sudden, right at the door of the church, two cars collided, and you can hear the sound of two cars crashing. The church was empty within 2 seconds. Everybody, I'm not kidding you, everybody got up there was only like 3 or 4 people left. And I was like, wow, man. I really thought I had their attention, but I guess I didn't. So, crowds. People love crowds, and people follow the crowds. And in the times of Jesus, it's no different. It's actually worse. In fact, in the Gospels, we are told 40 times, more than 40 times, that Jesus had a crowd around him. His response to the crowd would vary. Sometimes he would turn and confront the crowds. In Luke 14, the Bible says that there was a crowd, and behold, he turned and said, if anyone wishes to come after me, right? And so he preaches the gospel and talks about self-denial. And other times, he just walks away from the crowd, like this time. The crowd is not interested. The crowd just wants to see power. In John chapter 6, he says to the crowd, you'll follow me because you saw the feeding of the 5,000. You just want food, right? And so the crowds come around Jesus, and he always had a crowd around him. And we know when the Gospels speak of crowds, they normally refer to false followers. We know because most of the time Jesus either confronts the crowd or draws away from the crowd. And so Jesus has a great crowd around him. So here Jesus says, let's go over to the other side. Let's go over to the other side. And he leaves the crowd behind him. And there's nothing mystical about that order to leave, to go to the other side. I've heard, preachers say that that's just, they allegorize and say, you got to go deeper in your faith and all that. No, it's just an order to his disciples. However, you know who follows Jesus? In the next passage, we see Jesus and the disciples in the midst of a storm. The disciples feel like they're about to die. That's the cost for them to follow Jesus. They're the ones that obey the commandment of Jesus to go over to the other side. The crowd stays because they're not willing to follow him everywhere. They're just false followers that would just get their feet wet and see what's going on. And so the crowd represents, in a sense, the great majority of people. Those who are religious. Those who are curious and only want to see what's going on. Those who admire Christianity. Those who admire the teachings of Jesus but have not turned to Christ. Those who think Christianity is awesome. Those who think that they have great morals. Right? Those who are religious, they're content with just, going to church on Christmas or Easter or something like that. Right? And they consider themselves very religious and I love Jesus, yeah, but they don't follow Jesus. They're just those who come to Jesus only when they have a big need. Those who remember there is a God when they're in deep trouble. But then they forget him. What is the problem with crowds, brethren? In a crowd, you're just one more person. You can hide in a multitude. You don't have to be holy. You don't even have to be a Christian. You just have to pretend. You just have to pretend that you know Jesus Christ. You just have to pretend that you are a Christian on Sundays. In fact, many people can live as part of the crowd and be in church Sunday after Sunday for many years. I was one of them. I grew up going to a good Baptist church here in the gospel, but I didn't come to know the Lord until I was in college. Because I was part of the crowd. I like all the spiritual things. I like doing all the churchy stuff, right? I was very churchy. But I didn't know Jesus. I was content with following in a crowd. And everybody thought I was a Christian because I was one more face in the crowd. And in the crowd, you feel safe because you're one more. No one questions you. But Jesus does not want a crowd. He wants true disciples. He wants people that would commit to Him. He would rather have one disciple that has committed and fully sold out to Jesus Christ than 1,000 people that are false Christians in a crowd. And in a group this large this morning, I'm sure that there is at least one that has come to church for a while, but has never surrendered to Jesus. Children, teenagers that are following Jesus from a crowd only. That they think because their parents are Christian, then they also know the Lord. Or people that have been in church for so long, but that have never turned to Jesus. And Jesus confronts sometimes the crowds and says, you got to turn from your ways. See, Jesus does not want somebody in a crowd. He doesn't want false disciples. And you see, sometimes Christians also can act like they belong in a crowd, right? Uncommitted, loving the world, but on Sunday, we're channels only, right? Be thou my vision. And then the rest of the week sometimes, we just live like the rest of the crowd. But when we are together, we're one more face. We put on our best Sunday, clothes. We put on a Sunday smile. And sometimes we act like we're part of the crowd. Jesus wants true disciples. Those who will go over to the other side with Him. Those who would follow Him. You know who followed Him to the other side? His disciples. And so the first people we see here, it's false followers in a crowd. Have you turned to Jesus? Have you given your life to Christ? Or are you only part of a crowd? Or you think just because you're here, you know Jesus Christ? I pray that all of us would know Jesus Christ today. Number 2, I want to tell you about a second type of people. Look at verse 19 and 20. The second time is the comfort-seeking disciple. The comfort-seeking disciple. Look at verse 19. And a scribe came up and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests. But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay His head. A true disciple is willing to sacrifice everything for Jesus and trust in Him. A true disciple is willing to sacrifice everything for Jesus and is willing to trust in Jesus alone. And this is a comfort-seeking disciple. And let me explain that to you. It was customary for the would-be disciple to pick a rabbi, okay, to choose a master or a mentor. And almost like, like I was telling you, like today, many people are college shopping. Well, some people that would really, really want to give their lives to learning and following a master, they would find one and they would make a commitment and be very serious about it. But this disciple, this would-be disciple, this scribe, thinks about glamour. He thinks it's about glamour. He thinks following Jesus will be better for his career and for his fame. Think about this. Who's a scribe? We know who a scribe is, right? The scribes were the ones who knew the Bible better than anybody else. They studied it. They spent their lives learning it, even memorizing sometimes the whole Old Testament. They were the scholars. They knew the Old Testament really well. So any rabbi would have been thrilled to have a scribe as his, disciple. Well, most rabbis would take people that needed to be educated. Well, this guy's already a scribe. He just needs a little mentoring. And every teacher would be thrilled to have a student that was already a scribe. And we need to keep in mind that this man seems very sincere. He says he will follow Jesus wherever he goes. we cannot doubt his sincerity to follow Jesus, but sincerity is not enough in following Jesus. Or at least so-called sincerity. It is clear that he doesn't have an idea of what it means to follow Jesus. In fact, we know this because of the way Jesus responds to him. And it's very likely that even though he really meant what he said and was sincere, his intentions for following Jesus were not holy. His motives were not holy and were not genuine. He thought of his own gain, which is why Jesus tells him that he does not have a home. We don't know people's hearts, but based on Jesus' words, we can see at least a little portion of his heart, of this man's heart. Because when somebody became a disciple of a very famous master, he could be a teacher anywhere. He would have speaking engagements and get paid a lot of money. He would have a lot of fame and be respected in the community. And so this man is thinking about that. Look at verse 20. Look at verse 20 with me. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Notice that Jesus didn't tell him, no, you cannot follow me. But he does confront his intentions indirectly in this passage. And he does confront his idea of what it means to follow him. In other words, if you are to follow Jesus, you are to be willing to give up even the most essential things for the sake of the kingdom. And he was thinking the opposite. He was like a prosperity gospel preacher, right? We have a lot of those in Zambia, in all of Africa. It's about comfort. Jesus wants to make you rich. You know? Jesus wants to make you rich and wealthy. And he's thinking about comfort and pleasure. Now, it's what I'm, in my mind, what I'm thinking the guy is thinking, okay? Prestige. Most scribes were very educated. And they were even teachers of the law. So they wanted to follow the most unique rabbi. And at that moment, Jesus was the rabbi that was in style, right? Everybody wanted to see this guy that could cast out demons and this prophet that could, perform miracles and heal the sick and that spoke with authority, not like the scribes and Pharisees, as Matthew 7 tells us. And so this scribe is probably thinking of the prestige that following Jesus would give him. A good resume. Imagine how it would look like in his credentials, when his ID said disciple of Christ or disciple of Jesus, right? You probably get discounts in every shop. Right? So, position. He knew that most of Jesus' disciples were uneducated. They're just fishermen. And he's probably thinking, oh man, as soon as I become a disciple, I'll go up the ranks and I'll be the main disciple. Every master had a main disciple, one that was in charge or that would represent him when he was not around. Like Jesus had Peter as the leader of the disciples, right? And so he's probably thinking, these guys are ignorant fishermen. I'm probably going to go up the ranks very quickly. So the scribe represents those who are following Jesus only because they think it's about ease and comfort. They think that Christianity requires no sacrifice. They think that Christianity is about being comfortable. He represents those who want a Christianity that requires no self-denial and no sacrifice. And there are many Christians that act that way, aren't they? That they think that self-denial, sacrifice, and all that is for missionaries, right? Hired hands that will do the work we don't do. And I don't say this to make you feel guilty. I'm just, speaking generally. But Christianity is not that way. It requires self-denial. It requires sacrifice. This this scribe is a confused follower. The one who has not sat down to count the cost and to understand what it means to follow Jesus. He has no idea. He saw the crowds. He saw the crowds. He saw the amazing miracles. He saw people's enthusiasm. And he thought it would be a good idea to be associated with the one that was in the midst of it all. To be a disciple of the one who was the center of the action here. He truly wanted to follow Jesus, but he failed to understand that Jesus was not like the worldly masters. Jesus is not like the world religions where you can just do a few prayers a day, you can just light a few candles, you can just show up here and there to church, you can just give a few dollars and you're good, you are accepted before God. He failed to understand the cost of being a disciple of Jesus. And you know what the cost is? Self-denial, sacrifice, service, and suffering. Self-denial, sacrifice, serving, and suffering. Who wants to be a disciple of Jesus if that's what is required? Well, that's why it takes a miracle. The miracle of regeneration. At the end, we're not told if he followed Jesus. Most likely he didn't, because we don't see him on the boat, right, with the disciples. But the point of Matthew is not whether he followed or not. It's to show that following Jesus requires self-denial. And another point here to understand is Jesus says here in verse 20, in the second part, he says, "But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." You know what? This title emphasizes the humanity of Jesus. And in fact, this is the first time in the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus uses this title, the Son of Man. And he uses it in this section. And he communicated that Jesus was a human. Jesus used this title to communicate that in his humanity and in our humanity, we are dependent, we are weak. And Jesus was always dependent on the Father. So if the scribe was to follow Jesus, he must become like the Son of Man. Jesus prayed to thank God for his food. And when he fed the 5,000, Jesus depended on the Father. Jesus got tired. Jesus didn't have a home, as he said, and he depended on the Father to provide a place to sleep. And he's saying, if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to be like the Son of Man. You got to depend and you got to trust that God will be with you. Jesus tells us that a disciple must be weak so that he can be strong in him. That a disciple must trust the Lord for everything. Oh, I want ease and comfort. Oh, I want to be, well taken care of. Well, Jesus says, are you willing to deny yourself to follow me? The Lord will provide. The scribe wanted comfort. The scribe wanted fame. He wanted an easy Christianity, an easy following. But we must be like the Son of Man. If you are to be his follower, you must be fully dependent on God. If Jesus suffered and was rejected, why are we surprised when we suffer or when we are rejected? We are so obsessed, right? In today's day and age, we're so obsessed with making everything more and more comfortable for us. This week I have felt overwhelmed. For the first time in my life, really, I felt this way. Zambia is going through a major crisis. We don't have electricity. We only have it, if we're lucky, we get it two hours a day. Sometimes we don't have it for 3 or 4 days. We don't have water. There's a major drought. 50% of the country is in starvation, eating at most 1 meal a day. And by the end of next month, it might even go up to 65 or 70%. There's so much need right now. There's no water. People have to walk miles sometimes to find water. And we don't, I mean, electricity, okay, you can live without it, but it makes your life very challenging. You waste a lot of time. Your food goes bad. There's so much disease because sometimes hospitals don't have power to treat people. There's so much going on. And so I was with a friend and he says, hey, let's go buy a piece of cake. I said, oh, I love that, I'm like, I love me a cake, so I don't think this belly's from vegetables again. So, he goes, let's go get a cake. And we go to this place, it's like a Myers, right? It's like 70 or 50 or 70 different types of cakes, options. It is a cheesecake that has like 4 different flavors in it. The one cheesecake, It's like, and then he goes, let's just get a carrot cake. I said, which one? There's like 6 different types. There's a slice, there's this one, there's gluten-free, there's, I was like, I felt overwhelmed. I lived here many years, so I know there's a lot of abundance. But sometimes we think Christianity is about making everything so comfortable for us. Jesus was on a mission. And I say this to my own shame as well. Many are building castles on the sand that will someday crumble. But Jesus calls us to deny ourselves and follow Him. Christian, brethren, are you not tired of living a shallow, superficial Christian life? Are you not tired of dragging your spiritual feet? Right? To think that you deserve everything, to demand your rights. Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, he gives up his rights. He says, I have the right to a wife, but he gives it up. He says, I have the right to a salary, but he gives it up. He says, I have the right to be of my own culture, but he becomes all things to all men, so that he may win some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, he said. But yet, we are Christians, we are people at times that we demand our rights. And our rights are above all things. And by God's grace, we have rights because we're made in His image. But that's not what makes a mature Christian, is one that is willing to surrender his rights for the sake of the gospel. Is one that is willing to sacrifice for the sake of the gospel. Does your Christianity cost you anything? What does it cost you? It's a few dollars here and there, a couple hours on Sunday. Or are you truly devoted to Christ and willing to go where He takes you? So, first we have the crowd of false followers. Then we have the comfort-seeking disciple. And then number 3, we have the conditional disciple. And by conditional, I mean that he gives conditions. I couldn't find another word, so bear with me, okay? Because I'm trying to make it all with a C, so you remember, okay? I'm trying to alliterate it. So anyway, the conditional disciple. A true disciple does not give any conditions to Jesus, but follows Him immediately. A true disciple does not give any conditions to Jesus, but follows Him immediately. Look at verse 21. Another of the disciples said to Him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. So here's a conditional disciple, the one that gives conditions. And we're introduced to this guy that he gives a condition to Jesus before he can follow Him. In fact, this one seems even more sincere, more real. He says, Lord. The other one says, teacher, right? Teacher, I'll follow you. This one says, Lord, I want to go with you. So he goes a step further. And Matthew refers to him as another of the disciples. Now, the word disciple can have different connotations in different contexts. So this man is a disciple in the general sense. He's following Jesus in a general sense. He's from afar. He's uncommitted, but at least he's around. He's enthusiastic about what Jesus says and does. but he is not one of the inner circle of Jesus. He heard his teachings, he saw his power, so he is sincere in his desire to follow Jesus. Therefore, in a wider sense, he's a disciple. But he now wants to become committed. Now he wants to become real. Now he wants to get serious. Now he wants to go in the deep end. And he wants to be part of Jesus' inner circle. However, he does not seem to be quite ready to jump in the deep end yet. At least not immediately. So he's thought about it. See, this guy has counted the cost. He understands that it's not about ease and comfort. He understands it's going to be difficult. He understands Jesus doesn't have a house. He understands Jesus does not have a place. He understands it's going to be tough. But then he's counted the cost and he thinks he's ready, but, right? There's a but. I always say to my students, when you say but, everything you say right up to that means nothing, right? Oh, honey, I love you very much. You're so great. But sometimes, forget about what he said before the but, right? But cancels everything. It says, I am ready to follow. And he gives Jesus a condition. And he says, please, let me go first and bury my father. Then I will follow him. And now, it seems that Jesus is a bit insensitive here, okay? Because, the guy's father has just died, right? Wouldn't you let him go to a funeral? It kind of seems insensitive, right? Imagine if, Saturday afternoon you lose your father or somebody close to you, and you call Pastor Dwight and say, Pastor, tomorrow I'm supposed to teach Sunday school, but I won't be able to make it because my father has just died. Oh, no, you made a commitment. You got to be here tomorrow, right? Well, you think Pastor's a bit insensitive, right? I'm sure he would find somebody else. So what is happening here? At first glance, it would seem that that's the case. But that's not what it is. There are two things that are at stake here. Number one, the fact that this man is worried about his father's death means that he's the firstborn son. Because the responsibility of the family would pass down to the firstborn son when the father died. So his father had not yet died. What he's saying is, Jesus, wait until my father has died. I'll take care of the family affairs. Then I'll be able to follow you. The second thing and most important one is that a firstborn son would receive a double portion of the inheritance. And so in a sense he's saying, wait until my father dies, I get the money, right? Then I'll follow you. And this is pretty much all commentators agree on this. And this is normal in the culture, in the Jewish culture. It was normal in the Jewish culture. So it's not that the man's father has just died. In fact, that's the problem. His father has not died. And we don't know when he's going to die. He wants to wait until all things are figured out in his life. Family is safe, everyone is secure, everybody is stable. Then also, when I get, financial stability, I'll come and follow you, Jesus. I'll get serious with you. That's what this man is saying. And this man represents those who think deeply about following Christ, those who want to get serious, those who want to get more serious about their faith, but they want to make sure everything in their lives is safe and secure and figured out before they follow Christ. And there are many people that don't know Jesus Christ that will not turn to Jesus because this is their place. This is where they are. They think they're going to become slaves to some religion. Oh, these are Christians, right? That they know they got to get serious with Jesus. They know they got to sacrifice more for the Lord. But, you know what? I got children going to college, right? Well, when I retire, then I'll give more time to the Lord and to church. I'll be more serious because I'll have more time. What if you don't make it to retirement? Or then you retire like, okay, let me just go through this, I've been struggling with health, then I'll get more serious once I get better. And we always postpone it, right? And this is what this man is doing. And when Jesus calls you to follow him, there cannot be any conditions. You have to follow immediately. See, the disciples of Jesus did not give him conditions. I want you to go to Luke. Don't lose your place here in Matthew. Luke chapter 5. Luke chapter 5 and verse 8. In this context, so Luke chapter 5 verse 8. In this context, Jesus is calling Peter and a couple of the other disciples, James and John. And so they're fishing. They've been fishing all night, and they couldn't catch anything. They're fishermen. And Jesus says, well, cast the net again. Well, Jesus, we've been fishing all night, right? They're probably thinking, we're professional fishermen. If we didn't fish all day, all night, we're not going to catch anything right now in the morning. It's very hot. You're a carpenter, we're fishermen, right? We know what we're talking about. Jesus says, just do it. So Peter does it reluctantly. There's a big catch, and then he falls on his knees. And then look at verse 8. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men. And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. They brought their boats to land. They left everything and they followed him. See, the text is very explicit. They could have said, Jesus, these boats were like 18 foot long. Okay, 2 boats full of fish. That's the catch of their lives. Let's go to the market, Jesus. We'll sell them cheap. We'll sell them all. We'll make a lot of money. Right? That'd be my thought, probably. But they leave everything. The Bible is very explicit. When they come to land, when they come to shore, they leave everything immediately. They didn't go. They trusted the Son of Man. They trusted Jesus that he would provide. And this is a disciple. They follow Jesus without any conditions. And see, the call of Jesus is to follow him. No conditions. You must follow him immediately. You must follow him passionately. You must follow Jesus selflessly. You must follow Jesus continuously. You must follow Jesus permanently. There is no turning back. You've crossed the bridge. You burned the bridge behind you. There is no going back. You gotta follow Jesus. No conditions. When Spanish conqueror Hernan Cortez came to the shores of Mexico in the early 1500s. All the Spaniards were tired of a long journey. They came in several boats and they all wanted to go back to Spain. So you know what he did? He said, we're all in. We're going to conquer this land. He burnt all the boats so that no one would go back. You see, when you cross the bridge, you are with Jesus. There is no turning back. There is no conditions. You cannot be shallow. You cannot be superficial. You cannot be earthly minded in your Christianity. Some people, and probably someone here has not given, you probably have not, if you're here and you haven't given your life to Christ, what are you waiting for? Jesus is calling, you must follow immediately. You see, Jesus is not saying he cannot take care of his Father. That's not the point here. Jesus understood the responsibility of the oldest son. Remember when he's on the cross? He says to Mary, right, behold your son. And he says to John, behold your mother. And from that moment he took her in. So Jesus is passing the responsibility to him. So Jesus understands that. It's not what he's saying. But Jesus is talking about a person that is so concerned about safety, that is so concerned about things of the world, that is so concerned about everything being figured out in your life, and therefore has no time to serve Jesus yet. He's always busy with secondary things and busy to serve the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Why do you think Jesus put us in this world? To have a Monday through Friday job, have a great life, save up a lot of money for retirement, play golf, until we die? I'm not against all that. And you might be wondering, okay, if you're like me, very, we react, right? Are you saying that it's a sin to have nice things? It's a sin to have a comfortable life? Well, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, when I say that to myself, I'm using it as an excuse to continue pursuing worldly pleasures. Because we have no problem with wanting more comfort. Our problem is the opposite most of the time. Right? And if Jesus has blessed you, if God has blessed you with plenty, enjoy it for God's glory. Be generous for God's glory. There's no problem with that. You don't have to feel guilty if God has blessed you materially. And all of you here are blessed. The poorest person here is much more blessed than anyone in Zambia. A normal housemaid or a gardener or a security guard probably makes at the most $80 a month. And then they have to feed a family of 6 sometimes. God has blessed you, great. Enjoy it for His glory, but do not forget self-denial. Do not forget sacrifice. Do not forget what God calls us to. Don't be like the world today. It's like, it's my life. I can do whatever you want. It's not your life. It belongs to Him. Don't give conditions to Jesus. Essentially, this man is saying to the Lord, yes, I want to follow you. Yes, I want to get serious, but not now. I want to take care of some things. I want to make sure my life is secure and comfortable. And then maybe in a few years, when everything is figured out, I'll come and follow you. He's no different than you and me sometimes. Some of you, and I do this a lot, some of us have been bearing our Father for a long time. Some of us have been bearing our metaphorical father for a long time. And he's not dying, is he? I'm speaking metaphorically. If you tell Jesus, I want you to know that I will follow you, just wait, okay? Well, then there's a problem. Jesus says, let the dead bury their dead. He says that in the last verse. Verse 22, Jesus said, follow me, leave the dead to bury their own dead. He refers to those who are spiritually dead. Let those who are spiritually dead worry about the things that have no value, the things that are dead. Those who are without Christ, those that are spiritually dead, are the ones that worry about the dead things. And so, Jesus ends with one command. And He says, follow me. Follow me. And that's for you and me. Whatever is going on in your life, whatever situation you're in, the commandment of Jesus is follow me. It is the ultimate commandment for you and me. It is a strong imperative. In fact, it is in the Greek is in the present tense. So it is keep following me. Follow Him, follow me continuously. So this morning, I've spoken to you about the cost of being a disciple of Christ. There are people that are in the crowd of false followers. There are others that are comfort-seeking disciples. And there are others that are conditional disciples, those who give conditions before they can get serious with Jesus. Is this any of you? If you're here this morning, if you don't know Jesus Christ, if you're following from afar, if you think you're saved just because your parents are believers, then Jesus speaks to you and says, follow me now. No conditions. And if you're a Christian, stop giving conditions to the Lord. Get serious. Remember that it's about self-denial, sacrifice, service. And I pray that God would speak to us. This is the job of all of us. Not just missionaries. Not just pastors. It's all of us. Together we must sacrifice for the service of the King. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would be with us as we attempt to follow you, Lord. It is difficult. The world is so appealing. Our flesh is so weak. And Father, I pray that you will awaken each one of us from our sleep. That we would get out of our comfort zone. That we would share the gospel. Oh, so many Christians live without ever sharing the gospel with the lost because they're afraid. So many Christians live only seeking comfort. I just pray, Father, that you would give us the grace. In Jesus Christ, you would give us the grace that we would look up to Him, to the Son of Man who left everything for us, to the Son of Man who gave His life up for us, to give us the greatest example of sacrifice and love, that we would follow in His footsteps, and that we would live lives that glorify you. Pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.